Welcome back to the animation Q&A. This is part 2, and I'm going to go back to the question by Giuseppe. And I believe I answered pretty much all the questions. The last thing was, what's your advice for someone who is about to start learning 3D? And I think I was about to finish the thoughts before the whole camera thing turned off. That you should surround yourself with everything that's surrounding that field of interest in a way, right? So if you do modeling, then think about how things are structured and built, and anatomy and design and architecture. Just everything that's within this field can help you. So just don't stay within that narrow point of view where that's my discipline. Like for me, animation, I'm not just going to stay within animation. I'm going to surround myself with everything around it in terms of animation for the shot, the scene, the sequence, filmmaking as a whole, and so on and so on. So I think that was how we're going to leave it. And again, I'm going to be over here so I can have the questions on the side here when I am talking about them, so people can read up on what's going on. So there is Barello cheese. I read through this before, by the way, but I've already forgot all the names, and this just cracked me up here. So the question is, I was wondering what your process would be when recreating fantastical creature animations like dragons and dinosaurs. I've done short dragon flying cycles, but how do I go from looking, studying bird, animal reference to taking it to that next level? Is there a process in between looking at reference, applying that reference where I can, push certain movements, and make decisions which add more uniqueness to the creature? Hope that question is clear. Thanks for all the uploads. It's been great. Thank you very much. So I was wondering what the process would be when creating fantastical creatures animations like dragons and dinosaurs. So what you're saying here, you've done the dragon flying cycles, and then now you want to go beyond that for the next level. Well, I think you would have to look at what is the intention of the shot. What is the story point of the shot? So like you said, you looked at the bird and animal reference. You're potentially, if it's a fantastical creature, looking at a creature that resembles your fantasy creature so that the audience can relate to that new mythical thing or sci-fi creature. And how can you take it to the next level? So to me, it would be, what's the point of the shot? Does it need to be scary? Does it need to be threatening? Is it majestic? Is it something where it's like a new baby in innocence? So then I would look at different traits that are potentially not within that animal species lineage type of thing. Maybe it's a completely different animal. So if an animal needs to be scary, maybe look at a really angry, I don't know, like let's say a gorilla. Or like a really angry dog with the fangs out. Maybe you can incorporate parts of that into your shot. So it's not really a creature that relates to what you have, but it can take the essence of that and then take that and then kind of expand upon that. So look at what is the sequence of the shot? What is the whole story point? And what is the creature in general in the movie? Or if it's something for yourself, think about, well, what you want to convey. Is that a creature that just always tortured and just always angry because of whatever backstory reason? So kind of look at how you can embellish the main idea of that moment, that emotion, and then you can pick from different elements, different creatures, or even a human thing. Maybe you want to act something out and it's something that you like in your performance and you want to put that into your animation. So that's kind of how I would approach something when it's beyond just the walk or like an animalistic behavior moment of feeding or looking and praying. And it's a bit more story point driven where the creature has to do something very specific for that shot and that story. That's kind of what I would do. Is there a process in between looking at reference and applying that reference where I can push certain movements? That's kind of what I said, and make decisions which add more uniqueness. So yes, the uniqueness would be, like I said, taking things from other creatures or humans or different moments, or maybe get inspired by other movies. Not that you want to copy that, but you want to look at what have other movies done, what has been successful, and then why. Why is this so good? And then try to learn from that and then incorporate those theories and principles into your shot with your own, again, different viewpoints, different reference points that you can mix and match into something awesome, right? I say all right, no one's listening and no one can talk back to me. Ramon, how are you doing? Yo, JD, I'd be interested in hearing from you when and why you decide to work straight in spline or in steps to block out a scene. Does it depend on whether it's body mechanics versus subtle movements acting or cartoony versus realistic? That's a very good question. I have lots of thoughts on stepped mode. I will definitely have a separate F&A probably about blocking out a scene. I know I'm going to talk about blocking very soon, which is probably going to be in 2 weeks. So next week is going to be part 3 of the Q&A, and probably after that, I would highly assume so, it's going to be blocking, if not part 1 of blocking. But I don't really use blocking. So first question is when and how and why do I decide about straight and spline or stepped? So I don't do stepped, and I'm going to talk about work, because if you have a live action plate and it's all real and it moves smoothly, and then you have whatever creature, human, whatever it is, moving in stepped, that's a weird disconnect where everything is smooth and then the thing pops from pose to pose. It's a bit jarring, and a lot of people are not familiar enough with that process, so it wouldn't be a good way to pitch the shot idea. So because of work, I wouldn't do it. At home, I'm actually not doing either. I'm not a fan for myself of stepped, because stepped is great for poses, but if you're not disciplined with adding enough breakdowns and ease ins and outs, it's too good. Where you have your main poses and looks great, and I'm also talking in terms of the things that I see from students is that they use stepped and then they hit spline and then they freak out because it's super spliney, the timing's gone, and so on and so on. And it's because there are not enough breakdowns. You don't have enough keys. Like if you do stepped, you want to do your major keys, and then you got to look at your breakdowns. You got to go from, well, if I have this pose, how I go from this pose to the next pose. Actually, yesterday I had class at Academy, we talked about that too. So for instance, the pitfall would be if I'm sitting, right, and I'm getting up, which I'm not because I'm going to be out of frame and I'm actually wearing undies right now. So one of the pitfalls would be that's your pose, like that, that's your key. And then the next key is the person standing. And then they continue on with whatever scene with the very rough stepped blocking. The problem with that is that, that it's not going to be just over one frame, clearly. But with stepped, people kind of forget that it's almost like a condensed version. You still have to think about what is the actual time it's going to take for the character to get up from A to B. So your shot is probably shorter than what it's going to be at the end. So that whole thing is already different. But if I'm sitting like this and then I'm suddenly standing, there are a million ways how you can go from that to that, from A to B. So I could be getting up really quickly and being alert, or I can get up really slowly and then get up because I'm tired or I'm hurt. Or you might get up and go down again because listen to something and get up, and so on and so on. There's so many different ways that's going to tell us how the character feels. What is the objective of the character? What's the urgency? What's the agency? What is the outside influence? Maybe something is really loud and freaking that character out. There's so many things that you can put in to your advantage to show off your acting choices and skills. So if you just have the basic pose of sitting and standing, it's a bit of I won't say a cheat, but it's kind of misrepresenting the idea behind it, and it's not communicating in a clear way what the shot is about. So if you are a student and you're listening to this and you do stepped, then think about, okay, well, if I have different poses, how do you go from pose to pose? It's like when you do a head turn, right? That's your key, and then that's your key. Well, is it going to be just that? Is it going to be 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 huh? There's so many ways, and I think I did even a movie with F&A way back where he did exactly that towards camera. It's just, you got to be very disciplined about adding a lot of keys. And that's why, for me, I do linear. My default is linear. And then I hit right-click and spline in the timeline. Even though I probably should do just spline and do right-click linear, because I keep it linear for footsteps, so it's not spliney. But I'm just used to all those years of just doing linear and then just switching to spline right away. But what I like about that approach is that it looks crappy. It looks bad. Like the moment you start off with your posing and it's in linear, it just looks horrible. And it's great feedback because I want to get it to a point where I know that this is the timing, this is what I want to do, and it's ready to be presentable after a certain stage. So in a way, and this is moving forward because of workflow stuff, but I'll talk about that later. Basically what I do is I do the blocking in linear and then key every 4 frames, the whole character, except maybe fingers and face. But I block out the face in early stages as well, just rough stuff, even fingers. But imagine a whole character keyed every 4 frames. And the timing's going to be off because it's just every 4 frames, but I kind of try to time it the way it could be. And then I see the poses, and then I start moving the keys in the timeline until the timing is right. And it's very easy and it's very clean because everything has been keyed on that one frame. Once the major action looks right, let's say on the jump, right, or whatever movement you have, and I'm ready with this, then I go almost on a layered approach where I go root and then just the root. Just loop it and make sure that the root, the movement, the weight, the timing, everything is right. And then the chest, and then the head, and then arms and legs, or legs and arms, or kind of a back and forth depending on what the action is. But as a whole, I would block out the whole thing almost pose to pose. So I know the overall action within the certain length of the shot, and then I will go probably layered. Also, another reason is also because of work. If we have a specific shot length, and maybe there's a live action play with specific elements in the plate that the CG character needs to address or hit on, or something where it's just timed to certain elements in the plate, then I also do more pose to pose because I want to hit this pose on this frame, this pose on this frame for story reasons. And I wouldn't really do anything straight ahead, for instance. But I have done straight ahead as well. I did a pigeon shot a long time ago, like 4 or 5 years ago. I can put a link somewhere, a card or in the description. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to test the rig, and I had kind of an idea. I knew kind of what I wanted to do with the audio in the second part, but that whole shot was basically improvised. I've never done this before, and it was very interesting to just kind of start and then adjust and then tweak things and kind of get an idea and try it again and go back. And it was a lot of like straight ahead improvisation and then go back and fixing and then going back forward. So that's okay for me when I'm at home and I do my own stuff. But I don't think it would work for me at work with the type of work that I'm doing and the elements, the plates, and all that stuff. So long answer. So I do spline, so linear spline at the very beginning. Does it depend on whether it's body mechanics versus subtle movements? Or cartoony versus realistic? I don't think so. I mean, everybody has super different workflows where they can do everything in step, everything in spline. So I don't think so. I've seen breakdowns and blocking passes from people online with very subtle acting that it's all in steps with just a lot of breakdowns, and at the end you just hit spline and it's pretty much there. So it just comes down to, at least to me, I think it's being disciplined with really thinking about the ins and outs, the timing between each poses, and how you move from pose to pose, so that it gives us but a good indication of how that character feels in a way, right? So again, could it be all kind of head turns or get up or movement, or even if it's an acting thing where someone has an expression or a take, like what happens before and after and in between. It's just all that is your choice. Like you have to decide what the transition is, and that you can't do that with just 2-step keys. So I got a lot of thoughts on stepped stuff, but so no, I don't think you have to do anything in terms of mechanics or subtle acting or cartoony and realistic regarding stepped or spline, like whatever you're comfortable with. For me, what I've seen is mostly like so many workflows are different. Like if I have a shot at work and I take a shot over and the scene is set up in a crazy way, that's just that person's way of working, and you look at the shot and it looks great. I'm doing maybe some touch-ups, or it's a change because the client asked for a change. So it's not, I don't really think there's a set method. What I would suggest is that listen to your teacher or mentor or whatever you read online, or potentially what I'm saying, and try it. And then you go, I don't know, this is stupid, I'm gonna do something else. But I would at least try it and then pick and choose the things that you like, and then whatever doesn't work, discard it and take something else. So if you like to do stepped, go ahead, right? If you do everything in linear or spline, right ahead, why not? If you prefer to do everything straight ahead because you know exactly what you want, then it's more of a stop motion approach. Why not, right? If this works for you, it's totally fine. So I wouldn't stick to one thing that one person once said or one thing that you once read, because I think that might just hinder you in your growth as an animator. Just try different things, right? Amy Verheel. Hi there. Which programs would you recommend if you wants to make a 3D animated short? So if you're gonna do a short movie, and I'm asking in terms of PC and Mac and the whole process, and she goes PC, yes. I mean the whole process. And which programs would you use with preference on open source programs? Because I am 15 years old and don't make a lot of money. The money I do make, I want to invest in programs I really need. I make 3D animations in Blender. All right, so my answer would be I don't know. This is the honest answer, because all I know is Maya. So, and it's not going to be helpful if I say, well, if you want to do a short, just use Maya, because you can do, like you said, you do animations in Blender. You can use any program that works for you. You just have to look at, if you want to do a short, what's the look of it, right? What's the things, what's the style of your animation? And then will that program support those techniques? The rigging, the look, the lighting, it depends how far you want to go with it, right? And you might potentially use different packages, obviously for compositing and lighting, whatever it is. So I would look at what's your idea, the story, the end product, the look of it. And then I would look at what program will get you there the fastest, the best way, and in your case, the cheapest. So you can do everything in Blender and then maybe find a compositing software that's free and kind of do that stuff in there. So again, I can't really answer that. Because I haven't done a short since college, so since the academy 15 years ago. I wouldn't even know how to do it now. That's something else I need to research in terms of lighting and everything for a future, way future FNA, probably next year, when it's the third block about how you do portfolio and sounds and rendering, all that stuff. So I would just look at free tools, free software. Me personally, I would just Google and look at what's available, and you look at the list of what's there, and then you look at, okay, well, from these 5, what is the most helpful to me? And since you're doing anything in Blender, maybe, I don't know how far you'll get in Blender. I've never used Blender, so unfortunately, it's kind of a non-answer. But if anybody's listening to this and watching this, feel free to comment. So let Amy know, hey, these are the programs that I know of or that I've read about, that I've seen people use, and maybe try that. So anybody has any insights, please help her. That would be awesome, because I have less useful answer so far. All right. Martin P. Hey, Gene. It's not Gene, by the way. Congratulations for the subs. Thank you. I'm sure it's a hard work to keep creating an interesting content on a weekly basis. Yes, it is. So for that, thank you, mister. It's not really hard. It's a lot of fun. It's just time consuming, but I also like to do it a lot. So, and it helps me with the channel, helps me with classes. This is all for classes for future lectures. So I like it. I'm always interested in different animation workflows and techniques. Looking forward to these. Yes, I will definitely talk about that because it is important to not stick with one. Like I said before, you got to explore things. And maybe based on your long feature film experience, you could show us some problem solving. That's right. Interesting, difficult animation problems that you and your colleagues had to deal with, and how did you solve them? And something I already forgot. So maybe if you remember what you wanted to ask, Martin, comment again, let me know. But I remember reading this comment. This is such a great idea. So taking shots from work, or maybe even stuff that I did at home, which obviously is a lot less, and go through what were the elements, the problems, the technical ideas and problems, or anything that I had to figure out, overcome to get that shot done. I think that's really, really cool. And this might even be a separate series. I don't know what I would call it, but it would be something where I can take shots. And it's a bit tricky because I'm technically not allowed to show shots from work unless they're in a trailer. So I would have to look at things that are available online. It's a good question. I need to look. I know there's some Star Wars stuff that I've seen in trailers that I can talk about, but I don't know. Let me see. Maybe it's different if I just take one shot and it's an educational thing that I talk about. I don't know. So I'll try something. We'll see what the backlash or problem might be. But it's a great idea. I really, really like that. And I think this is something that would be very useful and actionable in a way where it's not just theory, but this is the shot. This is what I did. These are the problems. This is what I did to fix it. I think this is a great idea. Martin P, you should comment with your address. You should not comment with your address. You can DM me privately with your address. I will send you a box of chocolates because I think that's a great idea and a fantastic addition to anything that I do on the channel. So thank you. Holy moly. Right. Mahesh Pagar. I've never actually pronounced or heard your name. Mahesh Pagar. But I know you comment a lot. I highly appreciate all your comments. This is long, so I'm going to read the whole thing because I'm going to post this on my podcast. I'm going to fix this whole podcast stuff, but I'm going to read this whole thing so whoever listens to this can have an idea of what that wall of text is. So, for planning process, I would definitely love to know more about using reference effectively. I'm definitely going to talk more about reference, like 2-character reference, all kinds of stuff. But I did talk about reference before, so somewhere up here, I'm going to have a card show up with my previous clip about reference. So anything that's not covered there, maybe you can let me know specifically what's not there that you want to know more about. But let me continue here, because you are quite asking things here. What are do's and don'ts while shooting and using reference? I think that I covered in the previous clips for sure. Like specific eye line, props, and making sure that your setup is as closely resembling your scene as possible, right? So like my example was, if you're talking to a giant, put tape on the wall so you look up and you got eye lines, you got points where your eyes can go back and forth, and that's how you act with your head up, right? And if you walk around, you always have that point where you can go back to with your head. You're not gonna have, whatever reference point down there, and this is how you talk hunched over while you should be talking to a giant. You know what I mean? So your scene should match, like your setup should match the scene that you want to shoot. What one must be actually looking for in reference. Well, in short, reference would just be reference. This sounds stupid, but you're just looking at something that will help you understand the mechanics of a movement or give you an inspiration for specific acting choices, timing of things. And depending on your style, right? If it's cartoony, you're just not going to use that reference. You can't copy the reference because it's going to look like you copy reference. It's going to look pretty weird. If you do live action, you got a creature, even a human stuff, a digital stunt double or something, you know what I mean? Like I did a shot once a long time ago, one shot on Pirates 2, and it was pretty much copying the actor for the facial stuff and the body because he was awesome. He's a great actor. So if it's photo real, you can get away with copying one-to-one. It's just not that fun. It's creatively very minimal thing to do and process and enjoy, just like you're just gonna copy it. It's not great. The end result is gonna be great once it's rendered for the audience, right? But for you, if you do something at home, I would look at reference as a starting point. Okay, these are cool ideas. That was a cool move. That timing is nice. Okay, let me take this. And now you have to make a caricature of that. You got to stylize it. You got to take the idea and make that fit your style, depending on how cartoony it is. So for me, reference, what am I looking for? It's just reference. I'm looking for ideas. I'm looking for, if it's something physical, be it cartoony or realistic, and I don't want to use it exactly one-to-one, I'm looking at, if I pick someone up for like a little pick up and over the shoulder and throw something, be it a human, a creature, or a bag, whatever it is, right? I want to understand how that works. How is my weight balance, the shifting, or how I grab something when, and how do I readjust? I can't just make that up and hope that it's going to be one-to-one believable and real in terms of, yes, I buy the body mechanics. So I use reference in terms of, okay, I got to double check that this is how it really works. Okay, this is good. Now, how do I take this and make it work for the shot, right? So if you can't just shoot it and copy it one-to-one, if you go VFX and photoreal, then you got to take the essence and have that as a guide. And, you can just take specific poses. You can mark down on frame 17, I like this pose. Frame 25, I like this pose. And then thumbnail it, right? Or you can just write it down and make notes. Or you can take your footage and then set a key on your footage and then do a time warp and just have your actual reference footage in step mode where it goes through the poses, maybe with a couple more steps and maybe a moment of live action, real timing. You can just tweak that reference footage and you can take multiple takes, copy, paste, and make one master take, right? So you can do whatever you want with the reference. I would just be very, very careful with copying one-to-one. Unless it's photo real, it's gonna look weird. That being said, if I'm on the time crunch, and even if it's something where I want to do something at home and it's cartoony, and I want to just know if this idea works, I'm going to rotoscope it. I know this is the R word and people are going to but hear me out. I shoot reference, multiple takes, 10, 20, 30, 40 takes. Take the best parts, copy paste it into one master take. And take this into Maya, put this into the background with the right perspective for the camera, put my rig over it, and then I'm going to rotoscope this every 4 frames. Not one-to-one, but like every 4 frames. But then at the end of that, I'm probably going to use maybe 20%, maybe. But the reason why I'm doing it is because I can then block out the scene in like 5 minutes. And I know if my acting choices are going to work with that camera, with that set, with the shot length, with the size of the rig, the scale. Maybe it's a creature rig, but I want to act it out myself and see how much of my human behavior I can put onto an animal creature. So it's not there to copy rotoscope so I'm not doing any work. It's not that magical animation button. But for me, it's a quick feedback of, are my acting ideas working within the scene? Like I said, the camera, the rig, the scale, the time, and everything. So it's just kind of, because I can't draw. So I'm not going to look at reference and do thumbnails because it will confuse me with my drawings, would be horrible. So instead of doing that and then writing it down, do crappy drawings and add an extra step that takes time, might as well take that footage into Maya, check it, and if it's good, Then you can reshoot reference. Now you know, okay, this moment worked, this movement worked, this didn't work. Let me reshoot this. And then you can look at reference and then do more detailed notes or maybe drawings if you can, and so on and so on. So for me, reference is not shooting it once and then that's it. I shoot reference to test it, to see, to get inspiration. And once the shot is there, I go, okay, well, I need a bit more details on how my head moves here, or how I grab something with my fingers, or how my eyes are doing the darts. And then I shoot a take of just eyes, or just fingers, or just a move, or a couple, like something that's like a shot with 10 moves. I would do one move only and loop that, just to get a good feel and different takes and different ideas. And a lot of times when I do shoot reference, I loop it and I act things out. And a lot of times during the pause, when it restarts with the loop, if it's not a continuous constant loop, it's good to have a pause in between. I try something out just outside of the audio, whatever I want to do. And a lot of times I use that because it's not timed, it's not forced. I'm not conscious of, I gotta hit that pose now. I gotta be in sync with this audio piece now. It's just me doing something naturally. And sometimes that's just the best part. So that would be my approach for reference. And sometimes you have stuff where you just can't shoot reference, all right? Sometimes you gotta look for things online, and sometimes that doesn't exist either. So you just gotta make it up. So I use reference, but I don't use it all the time. I probably maybe 50% of the time. Maybe I should use it more. But for instance, I've done a lot of Star Wars and there's no reference you can use for ships. I can take a toy and go and do my X-Wing stuff, right? But it's not gonna help. It's not gonna have the right flight dynamics and everything. So for some things, you just gotta make it up, and you gotta look at other movies, maybe reference that's somewhat related, or just base it on your experience and the things you've done before. So I've done a couple Star Wars movies by now, so I'm pretty familiar with the weight and the differences between the Falcon and the X-Wing and the TIE Fighter. So you can't always rely on reference. So that's my point. Horton Here's a Who Jeff Gabor comparison reel, which is awesome, by the way, you should watch it. The way he enhances the reference for different characters, even characters that are not humans, is mind-blowing. Totally agree, I love it. I know using reference effectively is a skill that comes with practice, but what mindset one must have while shooting and using reference? So like I said, hopefully what I said before kind of answered that. If you are in the acting capability range of Jeff Gabor, who, if you look at his reference, I mean, he's basically acting things out and posing himself to camera so that the silhouette works. I mean, he's getting pretty close to what he's going to use, which is great. If you have that skill set, if you can act like that, if you are that cartoony in your timing and everything, that's great. Why not use that and see how closely you can stick with it as a springboard and then do your own thing? Because ultimately, you're always going to have to tweak it. It's super rare that's going to be one-to-one, right? Especially in cartoony stuff. So the mindset would just be, I think, keep the essence, right? If you can't do the exact move, but try to keep the essence of, well, in this moment, the character needs to be happy or sad or scared or nervous or arrogant. So try to get that across through your acting, and then you can always embellish and push your poses once you are in the scene. So I would try that. So for me, the mindset would be stay true to the idea, the objective, and the story point of what you're supposed to show to the audience, and try to do as much as you can to portray that. And there's always gonna be a limit, and then in your scene, push it, and however you need to with additional sketches or more posing or whatever. Or, obviously, also you can add your ask your friends for acting help, right? So if you can't shoot reference, ask someone to be your reference buddy, and you can direct that person, and they can act it out, and you can film it and change things. So again, if you can't shoot reference, find ways to make it work. So either ask someone, right? Or maybe someone has done it before, find some other moments that you can potentially use loosely. So so that would be my answer. Do you have any cool tricks for using reference? Like the one I learned from Jason Ryan is for facial animation, or specifically for lips, he shoots another reference like a voice actor's lip camera footage. That way you get interesting and more accurate lip shapes that you would never have thought, since it looks like rhythmic waves that are merging effortlessly. Yes, so like I said before, so I definitely do, in this case, a mouth take, why not? Eyes for sure, fingers, hands, whatever you need. So for me, I would say it would be a trick. So I think the trick would be, or just a different type of thing, like I said, retiming your reference, that would be a great thing. Or for me, bringing the reference into the scene for very, very quick blocking passes, where you can have, 5 blocking versions, different ideas, different pitches and acting choices, and then show that to friends or your leads or your soup. And that could be very rough. And you can always, preface it with, well, this is going to be different, not different in terms of the idea, but different in terms of, well, the poses will be pushed, but this is the rough idea where I would like to go. So instead of doing this from scratch in your head, I don't know what to do, and you kind of fumble the way through it, plan it out. So again, thumbnails, whatever you need, or acting, and then copy that thing, and then you might get a buy off on this idea, and then do more takes with exactly the idea that you want, but a bit more detailed, and then you can thumbnail into it. So like I said, so that would be my thing. And in terms of other tricks, I can't really think of anything that I haven't covered in my previous clip or just right now. But if I remember anything, I will add it for sure. There's always room for more Q&As. Also, how does the approach change while shooting reference for body mechanics and acting shot? How does the approach change while shooting reference for body mechanics and action? It doesn't really. When for getting reference for things that can't be shot, like say the Spider-Man moves, where to look for reference beyond iconic comic book poses. So I don't know. I don't think there'll be any difference. Maybe you can say in body mechanics is that you're just looking to understand the body mechanics, the physical, structure of 1, 2, 3, how to go through your moves. So you could potentially shoot the reference from different angles. And it doesn't have to be the angle from your actual camera, the render view. Versus when you do an acting reference, I will probably stay more within the angle and perspective of the rendered camera, because you want to see if your facial expression reads, right? If that's the camera, and I act something out, like for instance, my pet peeve, and this is, I'm not a massive fan of those lipstick cams or facial cams, whatever you want to call them, right? It's where it's just the camera's like a GoPro attached to the face, and it's just straight on, a weird ass perspective, and that's how you will judge the lip sync. Me tagging that makes no sense. This is great to look at quickly for your rough shapes, to block it out quickly. But if your shot is done and someone wants to do a detailed critique, I would never use that camera, because if you're the camera and my acting is whatever, like, hey, how you doing? That's whatever I'm saying. But the actor has to be like this, hey, how you doing? That is totally different than this. You're gonna push the silhouette, the shapes. This side is not gonna matter, obviously, as much. You wanna do something to see maybe shape change through here, maybe. I mean, the angle of how you present your acting to camera is very important. So then to have reference that's stuck like this in a way that the audience will never see, that to me is super weird and a waste of time. Sometimes you might get notes on something that you don't see, that's off street. Like, well, what's the point? So I would say concentrate in mechanics in terms of understanding the mechanics, right? So shoot different angles or act or one angle, but you act it out however you want, so that you understand and see how it actually works. But you can always do one take exactly how your render camera is positioned. And then for acting, I would say just make it more, at least me subjectively, I like to shoot the reference the way the render cam is set up, right? So if that's the camera and that's my acting shot profile, I wouldn't act it out like this. Hope that helps. And when it comes to Spider-Man moves, where to look for reference beyond iconic comic book poses, it's kind of like the beginning that I said, where you got your comic book poses, you got your model sheets and the canon, the movement of how things behave and the history of it. But then you just got to look at, like I said, the idea of the shot, the intention of the shot, the story point. So then you might have to look at just different type of reference that are not related to that character. It might not have to be something specifically Spider-Man. Maybe it's some other character, but it works for that scene because it's the same emotion, or the way this character did this to portray that emotion was super successful. You want to use that a little bit and mix and match. So that would be kind of my answer for that. I don't know if that helps. And like I said, when you can't shoot things, then sometimes you just have to make it up, right? So you surround yourself, like I said, with all those iconic comic book poses, and then do a hybrid. So like try to re-emulate, but make it work for that shot so that the story point is clear. That would be my main answer for that, right? So use as much reference as you can if you need to, and if you don't have anything anymore, make it up. And at least what you make up, the things that you come up with will be based on the research that you've done with the reference that you looked at. All right. What to do when you know you suck at acting and have no friends who can volunteer for shooting the reference? Does acting or improv workshop be any help? Well, I said before, find a friend, but you're saying if you have no friends or you have no one that could volunteer, Then it would be look at movies and TV shows and theater, whatever you have, whatever visual reference you can find that could inform you, but obviously don't copy that. So you don't want to take a scene from a movie and just copy that because someone will know that scene and go, wait, you just copy this. It's not original at all. So I would look for that in terms of ideas and reference and like a springboard of what you could do. Now, acting or improv workshops or classes, I think would absolutely help. Anything that will help you understand acting, how to get into character and think in terms of how would this character behave in this situation and kind of let go of the, being super conscious and maybe embarrassed or timid when you shoot reference where you're too aware of a lens and that you got to hit that specific timing. If you can just let go of that and just act things as if you're in that moment, anything you can do to learn that so that you can shoot your own scenes, like your reference, I think, yeah, absolutely, that would be great. I have heard many times that in the end, animators need to know acting, but they don't necessarily have to be actors themselves. Sure, because we're different type of actors. We're actors behind the screen, but we're also acting in slow motion, if that makes sense, right? We're not just doing it, and that's it, take done and print it, right? Whatever, or save your take. But we have to think in terms of all the different emotional changes or whatever you have on the frame-by-frame basis. It's a different approach. I would highly recommend you look at Ed Hooks, EDHOOKS. I will link it in the description. Ed Hooks has a great series. It's a great book about acting for animators. It's just a different approach. And I think he's done a couple posts on Cartoon Brew in terms of looking at a movie in specific sequences and then examining how good the acting is and if it's a correct way of doing the acting scene and so on and so on. Doesn't mean that you always have to agree. There's a scene from Frozen actually that I kind of disagree with. Not saying that I'm better than Ed Hooks, but it was a different approach and it wasn't really something that I would do in that scene. I think it's great to look at different people and their approach and their teachings and then pick and choose what works for you. Even if you're totally wrong. Like I'm sure I'm totally wrong, but anyway. So this is where your invaluable acting analysis case studies come in. Well, thank you. So I have two questions. First is, do you have any favorite books for acting? Ed Hooks I would look at. There's some other books I'm going to do actually probably a series, or at least one clip about the books that I have. And maybe some of them I'm going to do reviews specifically about the content and what I use from them. There's David Mamet has a book about acting. There's a couple of things I can look at in the back and maybe post that in the description. I can look at it there. But I'll definitely do a separate post about books. And the second is slightly big question. So let's see. And by the way, just to go back, I have read all those books and they're very interesting in terms of the craft and everything else. But for me, it's just different because we're acting it differently. To me, it's just, I can act things out and I'm not great, but it's still totally different because it is frame by frame. And it's just, to me, it's a different approach in just doing kind of doing your acting piece. Because also when you're just doing natural acting, it's also different because it just kind of works because it's real. It's live action and you film it and we understand. And you got so much detail in the face that we understand and read right away. Versus then in animation, you got to take that and stylize it a little bit, push it a little bit, look at silhouette, look at readability. It's just a bit different, that whole process. But anyway, so your big question. What is your thinking process while making these acting analysis videos? I have noticed many times you have pointed to tiniest things and layers of performance. Do you make note of these while you are watching it the first time, or do you go hunting for these in the second time? How does the process of watching it second time go? Do you turn off the audio and play it in slow motion? What exactly you do? Would really love the thought process behind your acting analysis videos. That's a great question. So let me go one by one. What is your thinking process while making these acting analysis videos? So basically, it's kind of like what I talked about the books. I'm not looking at great acting moments, which sounds weird because you want to look at that and you want to study it and be familiar with this and understand why it's so good. But the thing is, you can point at all kinds of actors that are great, but is that going to help you with your scene? It's like I can't show something that say Anthony Hopkins. I'm thinking about Westworld. It's a great scene with Anthony Hopkins. And say, well, here's a scene. This is great. Be like Anthony Hopkins. This is of no use. This is useless. Like I'm never going to be like Anthony Hopkins. I'm never going to be like as good as his Pinky, right? So when I look at those movies or TV shows or whatever, I look at moments that you could potentially grab, like short little just elements or moments and looks and actions. It's just things that you can use in a more direct way for your shots, if that makes sense. So it's not a whole process. You can talk about the process and the theory of getting into character and all that stuff, which is great, and I love all that stuff. But I prefer to look at moments where, oh, this was a cool moment of holding the stare, or, you know, how long did the character look, or what was that gesture? Why was that gesture? How long was that gesture held? It's just a bit more, I'm trying to look at more practical things. So, for instance, I was looking at Jack Ryan. I posted that yesterday. And then one of the comments you can see there is all the things that were great. And I totally agree, they were great. But sometimes they were so great because they're real actors and we know the context of the scene and situation, the build up, all that helps make a scene great. But it might not be something that you can use for your shots, but you can still point it out why it's great. But every now and then I see something and I go, for instance, I watched Battle of the Sexes. I thought it was great. It was a great movie, great performances. And there was something at the beginning that I wanted to post about that I thought could be cool for your shot or for any animation shot that you're doing. But as a whole, it felt almost, I wouldn't say it felt too good, but it's just something that if I show this to, you know, a student that does a lip sync shot for the first time, they might be completely overwhelmed. It's like, okay, yeah, this is cool. Why is this cool? Okay, yeah, this is cool. And now what? Like, how can I use this in my scene? So I'm trying to find things which are potentially more useful for animation. So it's not a full-blown acting analysis in terms of this is how the character got into character and did this scene and blah, 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 which is awesome. But that's why I call it acting analysis for animators. So it's hopefully, I hope, it's a different way of looking at things that will be helpful in a different way for your animation takes. I hope. That's my hope, at least. I have noticed that many times you've pointed to the tiniest things. So so those are the tiniest things that I like to look at. Am I doing this watching it the first time, or do I go hunting for these the second time? I definitely noticed this the first time. And I have this problem where when I watch, especially animated features, for some reason, I concentrate on feet and hands. IK hands and arms and things. Just, I can know the technical difficulties of you know, rigs sometimes. It depends how your rig is built. So I kind of look at, how did they do this? Like I enjoy the movie, but I definitely have my animator goggles on and then look at specific things and I take that in as well and take mental notes. And a lot of times I watch it again just to go like, oh, I've seen all this now. I'm done with the technical things and maybe I was distracted by that. Let me just enjoy the movie. But every now and then you just watch a movie and it's just so good that the goggles go straight off and I just watch it and I'm completely taken in. And this could be because it's really serious, really dramatic, really funny. Like sometimes it just happens. So starting Jack Ryan, I started, of course, to look at, okay, this is a dialogue scene between two people with conflict. There must be something interesting in there. But then I thought the show was fun. It was like a fun action series. And sometimes I would just watch. For instance, when they are in France and you got that French police officer, I'm sure if I go back, I'll find some things with her that are great. But me being half French, I like hearing seeing the city, hearing the language. I was just kind of into that moment so much that I kind of forgot about it, just kind of watched it. So I don't really have any notes for the middle part of season one. As you could see, I kind of have the beginning and maybe one or two things towards the end. So I do try to look at it the first time, but if it's so awesome that I forget about it, then why not? I'll just watch it again, right? Sometimes I just kind of forget about it and then it's been too long and I can't go back. For instance, I would love to go back to Breaking Bad, but there's so many seasons. There's so much other stuff I want to watch. I'm not going to go through all seasons of Breaking Bad specifically to sit down and watch and study, which I probably should because it's awesome, but I don't have that time. So there are a lot of things that I've seen way back. I watch a lot of movies and TV shows, but I wasn't looking at it that specifically, especially not for this channel or for my classes. Like there were things that I just stood out so much that I just took them and talked about them in class, but that's why I also had the same material most of the time in classes. I'm adding things every now and then, but ever since I started this channel, I have so much more material and I'm very specifically looking for things, even when I watch it for the first time. Do you turn off the audio? No. Do you play in slow motion? No. I just watch it. And then I'm just looking for specific things. Like I said, like darts and blinks and looks and gestures and just things that just stand out in terms of emotional, character choices or whatever you have. And sometimes it could be also physical, like a cool move or a sound. Like I'm watching ER. I'm watching a ton of ER. And there are a lot of clips that I think are great in terms of lip sync. So I have a lot of notes about this is a cool line from this episode and why I would use this. Now, with YouTube uploading this, you always get kind of a copyright notice with sound, so that's why I kind of leave that separately, and then do an unlisted upload for just the whole sequence. But once I figure my whole thing out with the podcast, which I'm going to figure out, I know what to do, I just didn't have time. But once that podcast is back up and running, I will definitely post there all my lip sync findings. So this will be something that's not on YouTube, that will be podcast specific. So anything that I hear, I will play it on the podcast and talk about, well, why do I like this lip sync? Why do I like this audio piece? Because of the contrast, the delivery, the ideas behind it, the pauses, all that stuff. So I don't play it in with sound off and not in slow motion, unless it's potentially some actiony things that I want to study. I haven't done that yet, but not that you don't want to do this. I mean, I highly recommend, speaking of no sound, look at talk show things with whatever, Jimmy Kimmel or Fallon or Leno or Letterman, right? And then turn off the sound. And then you can see how the guests, they move a lot. There's a lot of head accents, a lot of gestures. And it's interesting to watch without the sound, to see like, wow, they really move a lot. And maybe they have always a specific way of moving. So I think it's very valuable to look at things without sound, for sure. I just don't do it because I want to watch the movie the first time. And usually I don't have time to watch movies multiple times anymore. I used to, but I don't really have anymore that much time. So I have the sound on and watch it once and then take notes. And maybe I go back and watch specific sequences only to really look at that moment and maybe take more notes. Okay? It's a long answer. So yeah, I don't know if this is going to be part of blocking FNA or not. So here's another question. I think it's a planning question. How do you break down dialogue shot? How do you look for crucial poses? Yes, that's going to be absolutely a future FNA about dialogue and audio and breakdowns. This all goes into like different parts of workflow. So like for me, in short, my workflow changes depending on the shot. Like, so an acting piece, my workflow is different than if I do an action piece. And an action piece is different if I do an action piece with two characters interacting, right? So to me, it's more the shot determines my workflow, if that makes sense. So I will definitely do that in terms of dialogue shot breakdown and everything. But just in short, I look at the essence of the line. What is the character wanting to say? What's the objective? And is it a straightforward delivery and intent? Or is there some subtext that might say something but mean something totally different? So I'm going to look at that. And in terms of crucial poses, I think I look at my basic quick workflow for lip sync is I do the whole Muppets test. I put my elbow on the table and I go, hello, I am talking in an exaggerated way. And I kind of feel how far my jaw goes down and at what point. Like, what are the big accents? So you don't want to do a lot of jaw movement. So it's a lot of, chatter, skeleton jaw type of thing. So I'm going to look at what are the moments and then dial that way down. So look at just the massive point. Like this is the moment where I really want to accentuate the jaw. So you can do a lot of stuff with basic up and down, very, very small, and just shapes, mouth shapes, right? You don't always have to open the jaw to have a sound, to show that the character made a sound. So for me, Muppets. But the Muppets are great because it's basically just this, like, right? With no eye blinks, no eyebrows. It's great. So I look at that, the Muppet style for the jaw. And then I look at corners in and outs. So you have the E and the U for the extreme so that they read. And then usually the and the F. So the lip compression, and make sure that those are held for at least 2 frames. Otherwise, it's like a pop. So you want to have 2 frames on F. And kind of, I don't really look at corners, like the mouth corners having arcs and all that stuff. I just look at jaw in and out and the F. So you get all kind of the extreme shapes. And then that's it. And that's kind of my rough first pass blocking. And then I look at eyes and eyebrows whenever there's an emotional change. And then that's my in a way, my main structure of my blocking. Because I don't want to go too far into facial stuff because it's I don't want to do polish too soon, right? But I gotta put that light on here. But I don't want to do crazy facial detail at the very beginning. So I keep that for the end, but I do want to block it out at the beginning, the main poses, because I need to show when the emotional changes happen. You can't just do your default rake pose or your default hands. So I definitely pose that basic hand poses throughout the shot. And at the same time, you don't want to go into full detail at the very beginning because, like I said, what if the acting choice is for someone to turn around? And then you don't see the face. You did all that work. That's useless. So I do the basic stuff. So if I do this and there's already jaw movement, I can see, do I need to tone it down? Is it weird from that angle? Do I need to push it because it doesn't read enough? So I want the basic stuff there. Then I do the whole body stuff in there. So a lot of times I do the basic face first, actually, then the body. Then I can see what areas need pushing. And then I would shoot reference again. Like I said, I would shoot reference again and then make sure that, well, in this moment, it's from this specific angle. Now I know that that's the angle that I want in my final acting pose and camera choice. Let me shoot reference again just to see how it works from that angle. So that would be my approach. And the last question, how do you avoid animation looking too pose to pose? Well, I think it all comes down to a couple of things. A, you got to look at your breakdowns and your ins and outs and your overlapping actions and how your character moves. But all of that, to me at least, is dependent on the intent and the objective and what needs to lead. Meaning, if your character is sitting and looking around and there's a sound that freaks the character out, I would probably lead with the head first. So if I'm sitting there going, what was that? So I would look at, so it's not pose to pose, one body part is going to move first, but which one, right? So for me, if it's something that freaks me out, the head is going to go first. It might even be head and eye stay, just even for a couple of frames, and then I look around and then the body follows because it's being pulled by the head and the neck and so on and so on. But what if someone's talking behind me and I want them to be quiet? So then I go, psht, if you want to be rude or whatever it is, right? But then I would go, I'm going to lead with my hand first because I want to make sure that they're quiet while I finish my sentence and then go, psht, wait, then I go back. So I look at, what is the acting choice? I got my pose, I got my storytelling pose, but how do you go from that pose to the next? If you have pose A and then pose B, what is the difference? You want to say what with pose A? What do you want to say with pose B? Then once you identify and know what your intent is with pose B, with that specific pose, okay, well, what is important of that? What's your message? What's the point? Then how do you want to get there? What is going to lead? Is it something that's very mental and cerebral that you do with the head first? Is something instinctual that's more like a body reaction where you hear something or fly and you move that first? Like for instance, that's your pose and your next pose is this because of water, maybe water splashing, and you want to make sure that one pose is I'm relaxed, and the next pose or thinking or whatever, the next pose is holy crap, there's so much water in my face. So if there's water and it's going to hit your face, you're probably not going to go, interesting, there's water, let me protect myself. It's more going to be like, so it's going to be face because it hits this, and then protection, and then what was that? So there's a specific staggering and order of actions, and that to me is all dependent on the idea, the acting choice behind it. What is the character going to do and why? So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I approach it. Where I look at what's the intent and what moves first. What part of the body is going to lead to communicate that story point the clearest way. Okay. And I think that's it. Once again, thank you so much for taking time out of your life. That's no problem. I love it. Sorry for such a long post. Don't be sorry. I got carried away while writing. Totally fine. I love it. Lots of great questions. All right. Well, I'm going to stop it here. Next time, animator, power centers and poses. Ooh, good question. That's going to be part 3 next week. So we'll see how far I can get with answering all the questions as much as I can. So this time the camera has not ended. I can see it still records. So that's it. That's it for now. If you have any questions about what I said now, post comments. I can always add those questions into the next Q&A, so we can do a whole long series, and then that's it. And then in a couple of weeks and months, I could do another Q&A with another recap and for something with questions. So anything that wasn't clear, anything that you want more detail on, or I misunderstood the question and the answer was stupid, then let me know and I can say it again. That's it. If this was helpful at all, if you like this, I appreciate a like as always. And like I always say, subscribe if you haven't yet. And if you want to get notifications about all my daily uploads, hit that bell button. It's great. I like seeing the subscriber count go up, so then I can kind of measure the interest in this whole channel. It's great to see. And as always, this is probably going to be a very long clip. So if you watch the whole thing till the very end, especially for this one, I really appreciate it. That's a lot of time, a lot of minutes, potentially half an hour out of your life. So maybe you can just listen to this, so maybe that was better, and you can do your chores and jog or in the commute and you can listen to this. That's also great. So if you did all of this, thank you so much. And I will see you, well, probably tomorrow for critiques, and then next week for the usual uploads, and then Thursday, acting analysis, and Friday, part 3 of these Q&As. All right? See you then.